thank you all for coming. It's nice to see a nice group, a nice small group, which means hopefully we can have more of a candid and lively discussion. My name is Jamie Finch. I'm the chair of ILIG, have been for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it's a good time to be working internationally. At least the future looks good, putting aside COVID and Brexit and things like that. So we've had an idea, or it's David's idea. I'm introducing David, and hopefully we all know David. He is the chair of UKeiG, and he spent his formative years in Bournemouth University in the noughties and the 90s, and is now an independent consultant in HE strategy and scholarly communication. So lots of experience throughout Europe, David, and with Uganda, Africa. So today we are here to sort of put on record David's idea of developing a generic model of collaboration, which I won't explain any more than that, essentially, because I don't want to steal David's thunder. So that's the kind of context, really. I wanted to put it on record, and I wanted to, to show and communicate this to other people as a expression of interest from our 2 special interest groups. So without further ado, if you could mute me, Aidan, and then just give it to David. I'll come back in at the end and perhaps host the discussion at the end. But do feel free to put any comments in the, while you think of them, while you have questions, put them in the chat and we can pick them up later, I think, as a group. So I think that's it from me.
Okay, thank you. I hope everyone can see my slides. So welcome to everyone, particularly from to people from overseas. I know at least one Ugandan member is in the audience. What this arises really from personal experience. I had the opportunity to spend the year in Uganda a few years ago, which I enjoyed very much. I was there for personal reasons rather than professional reasons, but I did do some work with the consortium of Ugandan university libraries, which has the excellent acronym of COOL, and I'm sure you're all fairly jealous of such an acronym. And while I was there and working with people, it occurred to me that perhaps we should be doing something more structured in terms of what CILIP, and in particular ILIG and UKeiG, might be able to do on the international scale. So, the international role of CILIP can be very important in making partnerships with the global South countries and also multinational agencies and funders, with the objective of improving the global South countries' information and knowledge infrastructures, raising awareness of their needs and learning from their innovations and practice, often carried out under very, very difficult conditions, as anyone who has spent time in global South countries will be well aware. We could see the professional pool of people in CILIP as being a catalyst, as being available to leverage the expertise of members, pro bono, of course, to develop and support projects in partnership with funders, multinational agencies, and individual countries. There are enormous benefits which I see for CILIP, exchanging learning and experience, obviously, but also establishing CILIP's reputation on the international stage as an innovator that is very willing and has the expertise to collaborate on the international level. CILIP will also benefit by supporting projects of direct value to Global South countries, particularly in the terms of the strategic development goals, and perhaps on a very small scale, from the UK point of view, compensating for the outrageous cut in international development funding, which is just going ahead. Also, once established, this model could be used by CILIP to underpin applications and bids for funding. I'm sure most funders would be impressed to have the structure of what we're talking about now available in terms of CILIP or any organization looking to increase funding from funders, particularly international funders. So the proposal is to identify and agree a small number of Global South countries and multinational agencies to work as partners in developing the model. They would do this through compiling use cases to establish how the model might work in practice, without going into detail yet, but at a relatively high level. Partners would be individual countries and agencies with existing organizational and or personal links. And I've used obviously Uganda as an example throughout this set of slides, because I have personal links with Uganda, and also because we have as an honorary fellow Maria Musoke, who is the vice principal of Shambogo University in Uganda. So those are the personal links which can be very important in actually identifying and developing projects and collaborations. Also, we have a CILIP partnership with the African Library and Information Associations, AFLIA, and we also have had contact, partly through me in Uganda and through European Union projects, with Electronic Information for Libraries, EIFL, and of course COOL, as I've already mentioned. To develop the model, I've identified the following steps, sort of 6 steps, to create the use cases, particularly for Uganda. Firstly, we would consult AFLIA and other international organizations to determine current and future trends in Africa. AFLIA, for instance, will have obviously an excellent overview of library and information trends in Africa. We would enlist the support of relevant agencies and individuals in Uganda and in other chosen partners. And again, this is where personal contacts come in useful. And then to identify with these partners the kinds of projects that might be funded, for instance, in health information or in public libraries. Open access and open science are obvious ones which come to mind. Following steps are to identify past and existing projects, of which there have probably been many, and any lessons that can be drawn from their operation. We should also identify past and prospective funders and intermediaries. Again, we might mention EIFL and UKeiG, the PHI. And identify potential CILIP experts in collaboration with other special interest groups of CILIP, such as the Health Libraries Group and the Public and Mobile Libraries Group. So drawing on and calibrating the sort of expertise and the level of expertise that would be available from the CILIP membership. The use cases constructed will demonstrate the feasibility of the model the resources likely to be required, and the very great potential that we see here. These are indicative resources. They are not really very great in overall terms. For project management and leadership, UKeiG and ILIG would put forward their officers to take on these roles. Expertise and contacts would be from UKeiG and ILIG members particularly, but obviously not restricted to those two special interest groups. There will be funding of perhaps £2,500 from UKeiG funds, which has been generated by our CPD offering. And we would ask for CILIP for matching resources and funding, and perhaps move to looking for support from outside agencies. So there's not a huge amount of funding, resourcing that is actively required. That's the end of my talk. I pass back to Jamie.
Thank you, David. That's great. It was, it's a nice talk. It encapsulates your idea, and it was sort of 10 minutes long. So there's no set time for this session tonight. We can, if it's just quick, it's quick. If it's long, it's long. But I would like perhaps everyone to have a little go at asking a question, because I think the success or failure of this will depend upon enthusiasm and energy from us as people that are interested in international library work, or have broader interests than that. So I noticed that Judith put something in the chat straight away. So we'll start with that. Let's have a look. Okay. Yes, you're quite right, Judith. We do have lots of knowledge to share. You have lots of knowledge to share as well. I presume your operations in BookAid are picking up again post-pandemic, but well, as we move out of the pandemic in the UK anyway. So yes, Judith, did you want to have some initial thoughts about this?
Yes. Can you hear me? I've got different kind of microphone going on.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Judith Henderson. I'm a member of CILIP and senior project manager with BookAid International. I've been to Uganda many times and know many of the libraries that David mentioned, and there are many more, certainly in Uganda and across Africa. My own experience has led me right around the continent to all sorts of countries where needs are very diverse and multiple. So I don't have much experience of the higher education sector at all, although we do donate books, and that's our main purpose. But in terms of partnerships, we have a lot with all sorts of actors in all sorts of sectors, whether it is the public library, the National Library of Uganda, the Community Libraries Association of Uganda, for example, and a lot of the National Library Services in other countries. So our main focus is supplying books, but we do a lot of focused projects where we're working with librarians and increasingly with teachers to make the most of the books that we offer and make the most of the books that they have in their own collections. And I think that's really key. And I think there's a massive demand there for new knowledge, sharing knowledge, and you learn a lot both ways. And it's about the user experience. It's about the promoting reading, because without readers, your libraries are not going to function. And that's where we start our journey, which is working with the youngest readers. So yeah, so much to say. So I don't want to take up all the time. And in terms of funding, yes, I don't know. My experience has been very little international funding for libraries, particularly, certainly in the time that I've been involved and living on the continent. There was many years ago. Librarians certainly want access to courses and accredited courses and reputable courses from outside their own countries. So I don't know whether that kind of online learning or scholarships and all of that, that's one element of partnership as well, is offering people opportunities to learn and exchange in other countries, either on the continent or with the UK or wherever. So yeah, a lot there. I don't know whether one model would fit everything, but certainly there would be, I think, a model for how you engage and collaborate with your
Yeah.
partners.
Okay, thank you, Judith. And
I think it's very much pitched at that sort of level, Judith, and that's perfectly right.
Yeah.
Okay, good to hear.
I mean, we were thinking ourselves in ILIG about sort of scholarships and things like that. So replace certain awards that we offer at the moment. So it's funny that you should say that. So that's quite nice to hear. And do you think Uganda would be the best place? Because I know, some people think perhaps it's English speaking, and maybe we should be a bit more diverse. But that's a hard one. It's one of the countries I know quite well. So yes, maybe a bit of bias there. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But in terms of, I think the range of libraries, they're very active. Library ecosystem, let's say. So there's a swathe of municipal libraries that are very underfunded and scattered around the country, kind of trying to serve large communities with very little resources. And then there's the community libraries, and that's a very active sector set up by all sorts of people for all sorts of reasons. We work quite closely with their umbrella group. So yeah, lots of dynamism there, certainly in Uganda, and a wide range of a wide range, and a big so our focus there is with the refugee community. So right up in the far north, that people are coming across from South Sudan and all over, and Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a lot of work, a lot happening up there, and very little in the way of public library services for those communities. So yeah, could be interesting country.
I use Uganda as one example. I mean, I would expect to have more than one partner country. Maybe looking at perhaps a francophone country, so that there are differences, and we are able to explore some of the differences with multiple countries. But obviously, one can't have a huge amount, otherwise resourcing and funding gets very, very stretched.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Judith. And we've had another question. Well, we had a statement from Leslie. Should one of the strands of activity be explicitly to identify possible funders for future work? So what comes first? It's a chicken and the egg kind of question. You could open your mic if Aidan hasn't already done it for you, Leslie, and expand on that a little bit, and we can answer it.
Yes, I think I'm not muted. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Good. Okay. I think this is actually in your longer document. But just to be entirely pragmatic, I wondered if the issue of identifying funders, both for developing the use case and for different strands of further work, should be pushed a bit further up the priorities, and to maybe help attract interest from CILIP centrally and from other SIGs, for example. More made of it, and more made more in the outputs about future funding. Obviously, we've discussed this already a little bit, so it obviously is a priority for anybody participating.
Okay.
Yes, and I have the impression there's not a huge amount of funding out there to be got. But involving agencies such as IFL and UKeiG. I mean, they obviously do have a great number of contacts, and we do have a representative from IFL here at the moment.
Does the representative want to say anything? There's something in the chat just gone in there. Irina?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I wrote in the chat that we expect some funding for a series of open science training activities, and it's a 3-year project. And unfortunately, it's a development funder, so they're not able to support European experts, but they will be supporting African experts. And if we could think about some kind of mentoring programs or pairing your experts with African experts and working on training programs, that would be an interesting development and definitely interesting for us. And if you want, I can keep David up to date with the developments, and we plan to launch next year, but we don't really have confirmation from the funder yet, like firm confirmation.
That would be great. That would be great, Irina. Thank you. I very much look forward to that.
Yeah, I think training could be education, and training is definitely one plank of it, really. Okay, thank you for that. And Arjun, do you want to open your mic and give us some pearls of wisdom? Arjun is very much somebody that we know, the recent winner of our award to go to IFLA, and we await your article for our journal. But you know, you travel a lot, and you're very interested in education, library education, and you know, for yourself and the wider world. So yeah, what do you think about the model, about the presentation?
Well, it's pretty intriguing, and I mean, it gave me a lot of new ideas. I mean, new food for thought. But I would like to know from the presentation, like when you go for library projects, particularly in academic libraries in the global south, and I would speak for my own country, India. So do you specifically sort of like seek people with prior research experience and experience in project management? Is that a requirement, or it can be, I mean, general, I mean, people with non-research background can also apply for this sort of projects?
Oh, very good. So yeah. I mean, what we're talking about here is the project management of developing the model, if you like. So that will be relatively small scale, but will pull in expertise and experience from many different sources. But it's not a prerequisite. We want as many people to be involved as possible.
All right. Actually, I was very taken by this presentation of yours, David, and I was basically thinking in terms of going for projects in Indian university libraries in this field of scholarly communications. And I was thinking that if we have external sort of stakeholders or funding bodies like the AHRC or the RL UK, we can ally with, and if that can be a good option to have a multi-stakeholder engagement in projects, and we can, I mean, that can be one idea. I mean, because I mean, CILIP can be a major platform for bringing other stakeholders into one common ground. So I think, how would you, I mean, what are your thoughts on this actually?
Well, I think scholarly communication is of vital importance, particularly in terms of open access and open science. So building those into projects for the future is absolutely vital. And again, we need to have a quite a wide horizon to draw in different types of expertise and different approaches as well.
What about India? From Arjun was saying, we were looking at you know, beyond Africa, is what I'm trying to say. Where were you thinking? Mainly east, I guess. south and east.
Well, actually, I don't know much about the public library sector because I've never worked in the public libraries, but as far as the university libraries are concerned, within the realm of academic libraries, I think university libraries have got quite some potential to go in for projects, and I think it's a very fertile ground right now to be engaging with projects internationally. Particularly, we have the new education policy that has been framed by the incumbent government, and I think they have done a lot of stress on libraries, developing libraries, and venturing into uncharted territories like open science and open humanities and research data management. So suppose if I want to just raise the issue of research data management, which is relatively a new field in Indian academic libraries, I think this holds a lot of potentiality for collaborations in the days to come. But personally speaking, if you were to ask me about, going into projects, I would personally prefer to go in for projects in the area of digital literacy and how we can sort of, implement digital literacy for people who come from varying socioeconomic and cultural backgrounds.
Yeah, good one. Thank you. David, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, you echo a lot of my activities over the past few years. Open data, for instance, in terms of research, will obviously be a benefit to Global South developing countries because the data sets are there and freely available for people to run experiments on. So there is that capital in there already. There's that leverage in there already for potential. I'm a little concerned about the spread of this, and obviously we took Africa as the first candidate, if you like, partly because of the CILIP's relationship with AFNIA. Partly because of obviously personal and other contacts. But I don't want to be exclusive necessarily. It's just a matter of practicalities, and if we get a huge amount of funding following this meeting, then obviously we will look at expanding.
Okay, thank you, Arjun. That's great. It's great to see you. Looking well. That's fantastic.
Nice to see you too, Jamie.
Okay, we've had a few comments in the chat while we've been talking. Judith just said a bit about collaboration at school level is useful in Uganda. Is anyone from INASP in INASP here? So I guess we don't know. And this conversation has been mainly about the HE sector, hasn't it? But your use case is much broader than that, isn't it, David, if I understand it correctly?
Oh, very, very much so. I mean, I mentioned a number of areas that for open science, for instance, but health libraries and public libraries are obvious areas, as has been coming out in terms of the comments as well.
Okay.
And again, there is a lot of expertise within the CILIP membership in these areas as well.
Okay. Phil says in the chat, what input have you had from prospective partners in Uganda and other Global South countries about your idea?
Well, I had good discussions with Irina, but also David Bukenya, I believe, is here, and I've been talking to him as a representative of COOL. I don't know if you want to comment, David.
David, do you want to? We can unmute your mic if you're willing.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. This is David from Uganda. I work with the Uganda Christian University, because I'm the librarian with that university. And also I work with the, I do some work with the consortium of Uganda University Libraries, which pretty much brings together the higher education libraries. But also it expands to include special libraries, government parastatals and colleges and so on. And so pretty much our work is to really work with libraries and ensure that their services are really improving and they have access to quality information in a more cost-effective way. So we try to work with partners such as IFOL, and prior we worked a lot with ENUS and other partners to ensure that we can do most of these things to improve things that are important: access to information.
Yeah, thank you. I think Arjun needs to mute. Could you mute the mics of Arjun? I heard a bit of a dog thing going on there. Thank you, David. That's a good contribution. And hopefully it answers Phil's question. Phil, you want to say anything else about your comment, or is that
no?
Okay.
Not really. I suppose in terms of just this being a partnership, that of course I do think it's important, and when we're establishing the aims and so on that David's mentioned in his presentation, that very much does have input from those in Uganda and other global South countries in mind, and that that they do get to have their say at a very early stage of this this model that we're developing. But it sounds like, from what people have been saying there, that is happening. So that's reassuring to hear.
Okay, thank you, Phil. We have a comment in the chat from Ruth Carlisle. So I don't know whether you want to open Ruth's mic. Hello there.
Hello.
And as you say in the chat, you're one of 2 regional NHS library leads and working for Health Education England and collaborating with our health special interest group. And you wanted shared learning.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I was actually very pleased to see health was very definitely part of the thinking in terms of the modelling through, which was really good from the outset. So Health Education England, my employer, is the strategic lead overseeing NHS libraries, so our healthcare libraries in England, as opposed to other parts of the UK. But as part of its role, it's looking at education and training. So because it's looking at education and training across the workforce, it's actually been doing a lot of work in terms of, particularly with the pandemic, doing job shadowing and sharing in terms of mechanisms virtually. So as long as you can get the time zones right, you can do some quite good international job shadowing where you then do sharing, and you can have some collaborative development in terms of what's the asset, what's the resource that you're developing through as a result of that sharing through. So I think that there are some opportunities in terms of, if we are working collaboratively, to have shared learning. And certainly from a Health Education England perspective, it tends to be, well, what's the asset from that? So whether that's published literature, whether that's models that can be tested elsewhere, it's about the greater good, not just the good of the individuals who happen to be involved in that conversation, and how it can be shared to improve more widely. So I think that will be from a Health Education England perspective, and health and HLG, as I'm sure you're aware, has funded bursaries and places for people to attend different conferences, etc. as well, but has again been looking at ways in which there can be not quite virtual job shadowing, but virtual coaching sessions internationally. So I think there's an interest in health, as long as it's very much a collaborative base, which I think could tie in with the model as presented.
Thank you, David. Your response to that?
Oh, absolutely agree with that. Very interesting to get these ideas coming forward. And as you say, I mean, health is central, really, to this work. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea of a greater good as well.
Yeah.
I think that's, there is a temptation when you go down the mentoring line, you know what I'm trying to say. It's often people benefit certain individuals rather than everybody, whereas your project is about the greater good. So yeah, thanks for emphasizing that, Ruth. Okay, we've got no more comments in the chat at the moment. So does anybody want to, you can unmute your mic and have a speak, or you can just put something in the chat. Don't be shy.
They're not normally shy, are they?
Oh, no, definitely not.
There we go.
Okay, we have a hand up. Could you unmute a lovely representative from IFL? Yep.
Yeah, it's me again. Building on the health issue, I'm in touch with a group of researchers who would like to increase amount of openly available content in public health, and they're looking broader than Africa. They want to work with low and middle income countries in Southeast Asia, for example, as well. And if that's of interest, I could also connect you with them. I don't know what's the funding situation with them. Maybe they're still looking for funding, and maybe it could be an opportunity to include some collaborations.
Yep, that's good. Thanks, David. Your response?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Though public health information sounds like the first sort of thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment at all on anything in the presentation? Don't worry if you don't.
Hello.
Hello.
It's Alice.
Hello,
Just
Alice.
out of curiosity, at what latitude does Global South begin?
David?
I don't know. I mean, south of the Sahara, I suppose.
I was thinking sub-Saharan. Yeah.
So
South of Land's End.
so it wouldn't include Australia and New Zealand.
I mean, technically they are in the south, but I think the way that Global South is used is really to refer to what sometimes known as developing countries, which Australia and New Zealand aren't. And I don't know if South Africa is counted amongst the Global South or as a developing country. It may not be anymore.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Sorry, I can't give you a latitude.
That's fine, Alice. Thank you for that. Okay, so if there's no more questions and comments, we can continue the discussion. David, would you prefer to be emailed directly for any kind of further thoughts, anything like that?
Yeah, please, that would be good. Yeah.
I'm always keen on continuing the conversation. So it's not just a one-off exercise. I mean, are we going to talk about what CILIP's position is in this? There's no one here from CILIP themselves, is there? No names I recognise.
I think John Dolan has commented to me privately in the past.
Go on, John. If you could unmute John's mic, that's great.
No, I can't speak for CILIP nowadays, but I was going to ask, actually. I was just as you started to think, well, that's it. But I'd like to know the relationship between this and ILIG, which is involved, and the Working Internationally project, because we are making references to CILIP here in the conversation without somebody being here. But there is a whole Working Internationally project going on there, and I think that's important. On the so comments, please, or information, please. I know Nick has commented on the idea, but it's mostly, I think, if I remember rightly, about money. Not surprisingly. My other thought is I was interested in some of the themes and the strands that people were talking about, particularly around digital literacy and health. I'm sure Judith has a definition of sub-Saharan of global south, but it's lower income countries we're talking about, isn't it? Let's get real clear. And for me, another dimension of that, which spans both the digital and the health, is the whole business of climate change. I think at one point, one of the countries was referred to in the context of receiving refugees. Yeah. And I think the digital opportunity that can be offered to people in a refugee situation to access information of a general nature, particularly health information, to access sources of support or guidance or even protection, maybe, excluding the UK, but that could be in the list somewhere. That would be important, and in an era when lots of people do have a device of some kind, even refugees in many settings, not everyone, but in many settings. Yeah, the capacity to use that and to deliver things through that device of this nature would be invaluable. In an era when a lot of countries are resisting helping refugees, maybe there is scope to do something worthwhile in that arena, spanning those digital and health agendas I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
It was interesting you mentioned devices. I mean, that was one of the things that struck me very forcibly in Uganda, is the amount of interaction and business that is done through mobile phones. And there is already that infrastructure there in many places. What is lacking is often the electricity rather than bandwidth. And I had a much better internet connection from just outside Kampala than I have in Bournemouth.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, I'd welcome your thoughts on both any information you got about the CILIP link and perhaps starting to prioritise, not literally within this hour, so to speak, but early on in the process, prioritise some areas, strategic areas. I was earlier thinking about asking, if you like, a connection with that, whether we're talking about projects in one library or one village or one town or one community or one sector, and or strategic change in a country, which I think is a much harder thing to achieve and is often hampered by existing structures, infrastructures, governments even, dare I say it. Not deliberately, but simply because you're trying to change something that's been long established or well established.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that will be demonstrated by the use cases, because all countries are going to be different, and the projects and the level of projects that get to be taken forward are very much to be judged on their effectiveness within the country and the benefits that they bring. So I personally would not rule out the major full-scale projects or much more individual projects as well.
Thank you, David. We had a hand up from Leslie that's gone down now. So we'll come to that in just a minute, but we've had initial responses from CILIP generally suggesting that funding could be a problem. We've covered that one as a potential plank of work here. And I think CILIP were concentrating on the Working Internationally project. I still got behind me my Working Internationally logo from the conference. So it shows how often I update this profile. But yes, Working Internationally is definitely something they're taking forward in terms of developing content, blogs on partnerships and that kind of thing, and have the greater engagement with IFLA, and they're presenting Working Internationally, the project to parliamentarians at an all-party parliamentary group on the 30th of November. So I don't know whether we'll have access to those kinds of conversations or responses from parliamentarians. about what's going on there. I think sustainability in green libraries was identified as a priority for the Working Internationally project going forward. So whether there's something educational under that that might be a shoe-in for us, we don't know. We're thinking about maybe. I think the issue of resourcing was found to be a bit of an obstacle. Long on opportunities, short on volunteers. We don't know how many volunteers, we don't know how much human capacity we can bring to it, or what you say UK, the wider CILIP membership will contribute to this, or our individual SIGs, essentially. So that could be something to scope as well, expressions of interest, but those kinds of things. Yeah, and I mean, and Nick was saying, what structural systemic impediments do you imagine there could be? I mean, that's a big question. But yeah, we're looking at barriers to the success of this and the success of our use case, essentially. So I don't know whether you want to comment on any of those things from the CILIP sort of point of view, David?
I'm not wishing to put words into anyone's mouth. I think that the current strategy for CILIP is really to operate at the level of IFLA, for instance, and to have, in a sense, fairly passive rather than going out and grabbing projects.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I mean, putting this sort of structure in place so that we have it there for when potential projects arise, which can also obviously arise from the work with at the IFLA or AFLIA level.
Yeah,
the model is there for CILIP to use, and for CILIP to use with funders as well.
Yeah, yeah. So we've done a lot of the groundwork beforehand. But I mean, we are more on the active side here than the passive side, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Not wishing to denigrate. I mean, I'm not saying as necessarily denigrating.
No. Well, the passive side is easier to resource as well than the active side. Okay. Are there any final comments from anybody before we draw it to a close? We've been here for nearly an hour, so I want you to go and enjoy your lives. So, any more questions, comments? Just put your hand up if you want to, or open your mics. Ian's very quiet.
Just so if I may, just what's next?
Go on, John.
Just what's next? What happens next?
Yeah. So what's next? Do we want to summarize today's meeting and think about that, David, or have you got any clear ideas about stage one?
I think digesting what's come out this evening. I mean, I think it's been very fruitful and highlighted a number of perspectives and dimensions. So I think it's considering all that and contemplating it, and then drawing together some steps for the near future.
Okay, that makes sense.
And as you said earlier, Jamie, I'm very happy to receive comments by email. I'm sure my email is around somewhere.
Yeah, it probably is. We can put it out, or you can put it in the chat now. Whichever you prefer, really. There's no problem. Okay, well, I'll draw this to a close then. Thank you ever so much for everybody that's come along tonight and everyone that's given their thoughts. It is food for thought, and I think it does have legs, but we'll take it back. And yes, sorry, John, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel very shortly, courtesy of Phil. Maybe any editing, topping and tailing it. And thank you, Arjun, for saying it's been an interesting session. So yeah, at least we've captured it. and we can put this conversation to CILIP now and get their further comment and further thoughts. So that was kind of the plan for this evening. So thank you all. David, any final comments?
No, just thank you to everyone. It's been very, very interesting from my point of view. And I like it. Feels has a good feel about it somehow.
Yeah, I think it does. All right, then thank you then. Feel free to leave the session and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.